Welcome back to the Inside Earth channel. Welcome back. Before we start, let me drink my mate.
Wow, that was so powerful.
Today we're going to get a little bit more philosophical. We're gonna get more poetic, more Hemingway. I want to make this video for my romantics out there, for the people that love love, for the people that love people that love love. I'm one of you guys. But before we start, I want to thank you for sharing your valuable time with me, for sharing this time, this moment in reality with me, and for being open to questioning reality with me. Gracias. Now, love. There is a spectrum to love. There is the love you feel for your country and your culture, the love you feel for family and friends, and the love you feel for inanimate objects. I'm talking to you, babes. But for today's sake, we're going to focus more on the love between two people, romantic love specifically. But in order to understand romantic love and its existence in today's world, we need to understand old love. You know, that type of love that sustained through war, sickness, distance, the one that our great-grandparents or our grandparents, and if we were lucky, our parents share. What happened to it? Where did it go? What happened to this generation when it comes to romantic love? Did we completely exterminate it with the rise of technology, or are we still capable of finding it within us and therefore finding it in another person? Generation Z, or as I like to call it, Generation Zombie. You guys do not get offended. I'm part of this generation. I only call it Generation Zombie because we look like zombies when we look at our phones. Anyways, but what is our take on romantic love? Or do we even have one? Because think about it. We went from loving through war to going out for 2 weeks. From dating to create a family to dating because we have the same music taste or struggle with the same addictions. From let's get married to it's complicated. From mommy issues to sugar daddies to girl bosses to alpha males to multiple genders and no genders at all. I can honestly go on. From women need no men and men deserve all women. Where did we go wrong? I mean, I have an idea where we went wrong, but that's the general question for today's topic. This is clearly a message to my generation. Even though millennials listen up a little because the divorce rates are skyrocketing in your side.
I said what I said.
But we really need to understand what true romantic love looks and feels like. Because we might know a lot about the latest trends in technology, but I think we know close to nothing about romantic love. Heck, we don't even know where to start. As a generation, we have become so detached from the concept that our only reference of this said romantic love has become low-budget Hollywood movies. And if you are getting any lessons from Hollywood, you need to check yourself. With all due respect and love.
She's got a point.
A little disclaimer before we start. This is a general take on the dynamic between men and women in romantic relationships. I know a relationship can be composed of a man and a woman and a woman, but in today's case, I'm just going to be referencing a relationship being composed of a man and a woman just because it's easier for me to explain. But a little bit of backstory to why I love this concept is because of my own personal experience and the representation of romantic love I have in my life. My great-grandparents have been married for 75 plus years. I know how, I have no idea, but I asked my great-grandfather that same question. And frankly, he did not give me the golden ticket. He didn't even understand the question really, because for him it was very simple. He knew the moment he saw my great-grandmother. Since my great-grandfather did not own a phone or a mobile device at all, his vision of his future and his goals was very clear and simple. He prioritized working hard as a man in order to attract, in essence, a high-value woman. And that's exactly what happened. He found a great woman that was a great wife and a great mother and a great life partner. And he worked hard for her. See, my great-grandfather was drafted to war twice. And this is where I truly believe that love back then had more meaning. And it withstood the ugliest parts of human creation. But the lesson I took from my great-grandparents' relationship was that love is much more simple than we think it is. After all, it is human nature, so it makes sense that it's simple. Because just like my great-grandparents and my grandparents, during that time there was no such thing as finding the one, finding your soulmate or twin flame in order for your life to be better. If you did, then that was cool. You had someone to share memories with, but it wasn't a necessity. So what happens to this generation? The one that has multiple technological devices at the reach to entertain them in any situation. Heck, we even have dating apps that are supposed to make this whole idea of finding the one easier. And yet we spend most of our times indoors with our heads looking down on our phones, still thinking that the perfect person for us will appear. And the reality is that that's exactly why this is the loveless generation. Yeah, that's why I named it this. Because we know close to nothing about romantic love. And worst of all, we don't even admit it. Am I saying we have to go back in time? No. Absolutely not. That will fix nothing. After all, we're here to evolve as a human race. But we do have to admit that there is a problem, a worldwide problem, when it comes to true romantic love. And we have to be open to learning from our past generations. So what exactly did our past generations master? Just like my great-grandparents and my grandparents, life to them had more meaning in general. Life was literally more beautiful to the human eye, and therefore there was more love in the air, you can say, because beauty coexists with love. That's why the whole idea beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The beholder sees beauty because they are controlled by love. For instance, architecture. Architecture back then had more meaning, it had more detail, it had more history. Take the architecture of this modern museum and the architecture of this older museum. Which one do you think is more inspiring to the human consciousness? I mean, I know which one, but this is just an example to reinforce the idea that life was more beautiful back then. Clothing as well was more colorful. It was higher quality. It was usually tailored, and therefore everybody looked great in their clothes. People would go outside in order to escape from their day-to-day life with their friends, with their family, not to show off on social media. People asked for directions. They had to memorize streets. People debated with friends and family, not online with somebody you barely even know. But all of this beauty that in turn coexisted with love disappeared because of one thing: a phone. This single man-made device was the first attack on society, and in today's case, the first attack on romantic love. But one can argue that if our ancestors were given a phone or a tablet or a computer, they probably would have ended up like us. And perhaps that is very true. So maybe the question is, did we change? And I think as humans we didn't, but rather our society changed. And I know we always blame this unseen concept called society for everything, but it's the best way I can explain it. And how did society change and in turn change us? Well, let's go into a little bit of a conspiracy. Those in power changed it over time in order to build stronger countries but weaker citizens. And we all know by now that the enemy of power is love. So if you have a loveless society, you have a powerless society. And a powerless society is essentially composed of citizens that are very easily controlled and manipulated, aka history and the present world. But lose no hope, my friend. Not all was lost because of technology. I mean, a big part of romantic love was lost because of technology, but not all of it. There are three main reasons to why we have become the loveless generation. Number one, obviously the rise of technology. Number two, the competition between the ego and the soul. And number three, the lack of representation. Like I said, a big factor has become the rise of technology and the fast rise of technology. The fact that not a lot of people go outside. They be outside, but they don't go outside and experience life. You know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Technology has essentially completely obliterated the chance of finding a lifetime partner or even a lifetime friend. And let's say that people do go outside. Half of the time they're looking down at their phones. And it makes you think, how many people have lost the chance of meeting a great person just because they decided to look at a funny video or take a picture of their drink or their food in order to post it on social media and get that instant sweet gratification. We stay indoors looking at romantic movies, reading romantic books, doom scrolling on social media looking at the perfect man or the perfect woman or couple goals. We try to find love in a world that's not even real. Somebody quote me on that. I swear if I see that in a book title, I'm gonna be waiting for my check.
Pay me my money.
Well, I'm sure my people will be
In cash.
We have not only disconnected literally from reality, but now women have created these ridiculous standards for men, and men have done the same thing. And this takes us to our second problem, the ego versus the soul. It is ridiculous to believe that we live in a world where a date at the park has less value than a date at the most expensive restaurant. Since we live in an unrealistic world, we have accommodated to unrealistic and frankly irrelevant standards when it comes to romantic love, when in reality most men do not deserve the woman they think they do, and most women do not deserve the man they think they do. And also, if you like someone, you like them because of them, not what's around them. I thought we kind of knew this, but I guess we need to keep repeating it for the people in the back. So what really is the concept ego versus the soul? Oh, let me tell you.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
Most people in today's society love with the ego. That's why phrases like, I'm a 10, men are trash, one woman is not enough, are so popular. This is the simplest way I can explain it. The ego is me, and the soul is we. The ego fights for self-importance while the soul fights for unity. It's that simple. A relationship that is driven by the ego ends up in breakups and divorce, and a relationship that is driven by the soul usually ends up in the creation of a strong family unit. See, modern couples tend to love with the ego. That's why they're in constant competition. Who's hotter? Who gets more attention? Who gets more likes? Who has more things? Who has more money? For a couple that loves with the soul, competing is literally irrelevant because they're there to create a strong union. So how can you tell if a relationship is ego driven? Once a couple decides to be together and they start competing, they start to blame each other for things, they mix their present relationship with past relationships, or they worry about their future worth instead relationship, or prioritize themselves. These are all signs that a relationship is ego driven. And don't get me wrong, there could have been love at first, but the relationship between those two individuals is not driven by true romantic love. It's driven by the ego. That's why I really believe that there's some relationships that do not have to become romantic. They could just be a good relationship between two people. So why do people even love with the ego? Why can't they just automatically love with the soul? Well, my friend, in order to love with the soul and in turn be loved with the soul, you need to love yourself. I know, everybody repeats loving yourself, very important. I'm not talking about doing your nails, getting a haircut. I'm not talking about that. That's not self-love. I mean, genuinely being at peace that if you don't find that person, you're still gonna be happy in life. That's loving yourself. Because everything in life and life itself begins and ends with you. And also, how do you expect to give something that you do not have yourself? Because when you love yourself, there's no need to use the ego as a shield. But wait, what if that's how I learned to love? Babes, because you have a lack of representation. And that takes us to our final point. The lack of representation in people's life. And you thought you weren't getting stats in this video? I'm bringing in the stats. After all, 50% of marriages end up in divorce. Around 50% of children in the United States have witnessed their parents end their marriage. And 1 in 4 children in the US under the age of 18, which is around 23% of children, live in a one-parent household. So yes, there is a lack of representation when it comes to strong romantic partnerships. So basically, it is up to us as a generation to rebuild strong partnerships and in turn rebuild strong family units. So no pressure at all. Before we end, I wanted to share a little diagram I did because for funsies. I like to call it the 3 types of relationship in planet Earth. I don't know how they do it in other planets, but I can only speak for this planet. We have the traditional. Men goes to work, women stays at home, builds a home, and they both honor and respect each other's role. Nice, perfect. We have the we both work. Both the man and the woman work, or both partners work, and that is a-okay until you present a child to the picture. But it usually ends up in divorce or the neglect of the child, whether that be literally or emotionally. And we have the final partnership, the girl boss / alpha male. The men need no woman by their side, and the woman needs no man. Also, there's a little twist on this one too. The woman might have a child and still not want or need a man. Choose your character. But you may be asking, okay, cool and everything, nice conversation, but what is the formula to finding the one? Honestly, that formula was actually given to me by Nikola Tesla, and I have it in my archives, but I can share a snippet. And it is work on yourself. Again, who would have thought? Become the best man or woman for yourself first and for the world's sake. Don't feed the ego, but rather nourish the soul. Polish your health and your state of mind. And you, my friend, will meet the perfect person when you least expect it, but when you're the most ready. And like Shakespeare said, love all, but trust few. Hasta la próxima. Ciao.
Shout out to everybody. I had fun.
I gotta be good.